She was just in seat 12F, Part 1. The morning light filtered through the airport windows as travelers rushed past each other, dragging suitcases and checking departure times. Among them walked a woman who looked like anyone else. Average height, brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She carried a worn leather laptop bag and pulled a small carry-on suitcase with a broken wheel that made an annoying click-click-click sound every third rotation. Her name was Lisa Thompson. At least that's what her boarding pass said. She glanced at the paper ticket in her hand again. Flight 2473, Seattle to Washington, D.C., seat 12F. Just another business trip, she muttered to herself, joining the line for security. All around her, people tapped on phones, sipped coffee, and complained about delays. Lisa stood quietly, her eyes occasionally scanning the crowd with a precision that seemed out of place for someone who supposedly worked at a mid-level tech company. The security line moved slowly. A toddler threw a tantrum. A businessman argued about the size of his carry-on. Lisa waited patiently, her face revealing nothing. "Next," called the TSA agent, waving her forward. Lisa placed her laptop bag on the conveyor belt, followed by her suitcase. She removed her shoes and jacket, placing them in a gray bin. "Everything by the book. Nothing special." "Ma'am, is this your bag?" asked another agent, pointing to the screen. "Yes," Lisa replied, her voice calm. "Mind if we take a look?" "Go ahead." The agent unzipped her bag and rummaged through the contents. Clothes folded with military precision, toiletries in clear bags, a dog-eared paperback thriller. "Nothing suspicious." The agent nodded, zipped the bag, and passed it back. "Have a good flight," he said. Lisa nodded and collected her belongings. Gate 34 was crowded when she arrived. A flight to Chicago had been delayed, and frustrated passengers filled the waiting area. Lisa found a seat near the window and opened her laptop. To anyone watching, she appeared to be reviewing spreadsheets and sales projections. In reality, she was running a series of encryption programs that would leave no trace on her hard drive once closed. Her phone vibrated. The text message contained only numbers, 952276. Lisa deleted the message immediately and checked her watch. 30 minutes until boarding. The boarding process began with the usual chaos. People crowding the gate despite clear instructions about boarding groups. Overhead bins filling too quickly. Flight attendants maintaining plastic smiles through mounting stress. "Group 3, now boarding," announced the gate agent. Lisa stood, gathered her belongings, and joined the line. She handed her boarding pass to the agent. "Have a nice flight, Ms. Thompson," the agent said with a rehearsed smile. Lisa walked down the jet bridge, feeling the subtle change in air pressure. The familiar smell of airplane cabin, a mix of recycled air, cleaning products, and coffee, greeted her as she stepped aboard. "Welcome," said a flight attendant with blonde hair and too bright lipstick. "Seat 12F will be on your right, about halfway down." Lisa nodded her thanks and made her way through the narrow aisle, avoiding elbows and bags from passengers already seated. Row 12 came into view. A man in a business suit occupied 12D, the aisle seat. The middle seat 12E remained empty for now. Lisa's window seat 12F awaited her. "Excuse me," she said to the man who stood to let her pass. "Headed to D.C. for business or pleasure?" he asked as she settled in. "Business," Lisa replied with a polite but conversation-ending smile. She stowed her laptop bag under the seat in front of her and fastened her seatbelt. Through the window, she watched ground crew loading luggage and refueling the plane. One worker caught her attention. He wore the same uniform as the others but moved with a different rhythm. He glanced up at the plane windows briefly. Lisa turned away. More passengers filed in. A heavy-set woman with a floral blouse claimed the middle seat next to Lisa. She smiled warmly. "I'm Helen," she said, extending her hand. "Lisa," she replied, shaking it briefly. "First time to D.C.?" Helen asked. "No, I go there often for work." "Oh? What do you do?" "Data analysis for a tech company," Lisa said, the practiced line rolling off her tongue easily. "Nothing exciting. Just numbers and charts all day." "Well, someone's got to do it," Helen said with a laugh. She pulled out a magazine and began flipping through it, much to Lisa's relief. The flight attendants began their safety demonstration as the plane pushed back from the gate. Lisa watched with the polite attention of someone who had seen it dozens of times before. Her eyes, however, noted every exit, every crew member, every passenger within her line of sight. The plane taxied to the runway, engines rumbling beneath them. Lisa checked her watch again, a habit that seemed innocent enough but was actually a verification that the small device was still functioning properly. It looked like an ordinary smartwatch but contained communication technology that wasn't available to the public. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for takeoff. Flight attendants, please be seated," announced the captain. The plane accelerated down the runway, pressing Lisa gently back into her seat. She watched Seattle disappear beneath the clouds, the city shrinking until it was nothing more than a distant pattern of lights and streets. Once they reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign turned off with a ding. Passengers began moving about the cabin. Lisa remained seated, opening her book to page 47. She wasn't actually reading. The book was just a prop that made her look occupied. "Drinks?" asked a flight attendant stopping at their row with a cart. "Just water, please," Lisa requested. Helen ordered a ginger ale. The businessman across the aisle asked for whiskey. Neat, ordinary people on an ordinary flight. Except one of them wasn't ordinary at all. Lisa sipped her water and glanced at her watch again. 11:42 a.m. Pacific time. In exactly 3 hours, everything would change. But for now, she had to blend in, to be just another forgettable face in seat 12F. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, causing the drinks to slosh and passengers to grip their armrests. Lisa remained calm, her eyes briefly meeting those of a flight attendant at the back of the plane. Something passed between them, a look of recognition so subtle that no one else would have noticed it. Lisa returned to her book, turning a page she hadn't read. Her mind was elsewhere, running through contingencies and protocols established years ago for situations exactly like this one. The files secured in her encrypted drive contained information that could prevent a disaster, but only if she reached Washington in time. Helen had fallen asleep beside her, the magazine still open on her lap. The businessman across the aisle was working on his laptop. 2 rows ahead, a mother tried to quiet a fussy baby. Normal people with normal concerns. Lisa envied them sometimes. They worried about deadlines and daycare, about mortgage payments and meeting the right person. They didn't carry the weight she did. They didn't know what it meant to hold secrets that could change the course of history. As the flight continued eastward, Lisa maintained her cover, reading, accepting a bland airplane meal, using the restroom once. To everyone around her, she was unremarkable. Just a woman in seat 12F, flying from Seattle to D.C. But in 2 hours and 17 minutes, 2 F-22 Raptor fighter jets would appear alongside their commercial aircraft. The captain would announce a diversion due to mechanical issues. Passengers would panic. She closed her book and placed it carefully in the seat pocket in front of her. Helen was still asleep beside her, her head tilted at an uncomfortable angle against the headrest. The businessman in the aisle seat was watching a movie on his tablet, wireless earbuds blocking out the world around him. Outside Lisa's window, the landscape below had changed from the mountains of the northwest to the flat farmlands of the Midwest. Squares of brown and green stretched out like a patchwork quilt, with thin ribbons of highways cutting through them. That's when she saw it, a flash of metal in the corner of her vision. Lisa didn't turn her head immediately, didn't want to draw attention. Instead, she adjusted herself in her seat as if trying to get comfortable, and glanced casually out the window. An F-22 Raptor fighter jet was flying alongside their commercial airliner, matching their speed perfectly. Its sleek, angular form was unmistakable, a marvel of military engineering designed for air superiority. Lisa knew another one would be positioned on the opposite side of the plane, invisible to her from this angle. The sight of the military aircraft sent a chill down her spine, despite her preparation. Things were now in motion that couldn't be stopped. As if on cue, the captain's voice came over the intercom, sounding measured but tight. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I regret to inform you that we're experiencing some mechanical issues with one of our systems. As a precautionary measure, we'll be diverting to a nearby airfield to have this checked out. There's absolutely no immediate danger, but safety protocols require us to land and have technicians take a look. We anticipate this will add approximately 2 hours to our journey time. The flight attendants will provide more information as it becomes available. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened as we may experience some turbulence during our descent. The calm delivery didn't prevent the immediate wave of concern that swept through the cabin. The businessman removed his earbuds, frowning. Helen jerked awake at the announcement, blinking in confusion. "What's happening?" she asked, looking around blearily. "Just a mechanical issue," Lisa reassured her. "Nothing serious." A young man across the aisle pulled up the window shade and gasped. "There's a fighter jet out there," he exclaimed, loud enough for several rows to hear. The reaction was immediate. Other passengers rushed to windows, craning their necks to see. Phones came out to take pictures. Voices rose in pitch and volume as people speculated about what was happening. Are we being hijacked? Is this a terrorist thing? Why would they send military planes for a mechanical problem? Lisa remained seated, her expression carefully neutral despite the chaos developing around her. She watched as the flight attendants moved through the cabin, their professional smiles now strained as they tried to calm increasingly panicked passengers. The plane banked to the left, changing course. Lisa felt the subtle shift in altitude as they began to descend. Through her window, she could see the F-22 maintaining its position, a silent guardian with deadly capabilities. A flight attendant with a name tag reading Diane approached their row. She was young, probably new to the job and struggling to maintain her composure. "Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts," she instructed the standing passengers. "Everything is under control." As Diane passed by, Lisa reached out and lightly touched her arm. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I need to speak with the captain." Diane gave her a tight smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's not possible during this situation. If you have concerns..." Lisa cut her off by reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small black leather wallet. She flipped it open just long enough for Diane to see the credentials inside, not long enough for others nearby to notice. The flight attendant's eyes widened slightly. "I see," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Please wait here." Lisa nodded and Diane continued down the aisle, now moving with more purpose. Helen looked at Lisa curiously. "What was that about?" she asked. "I just wanted to ask about connecting flights." Lisa lied smoothly. "With this delay, I might miss mine." Helen nodded sympathetically. "Me too. I've got a tight connection to Richmond." The plane continued its descent. Outside, the landscape was changing again. They were approaching what looked like a military installation. Lisa recognized Andrews Air Force Base, a facility she had visited before under very different circumstances. Diane returned, leaning down close to Lisa. "The captain will speak with you after we land. He says to tell you that Bluebird is in the nest." Lisa nodded, the code phrase confirming what she already knew. Protocol had been activated at the highest levels. The interception and diversion weren't random. They were part of a contingency plan that she herself had helped design years ago. "Thank you," she replied. The descent grew steeper. Through the windows, passengers could now clearly see they were approaching a military base, not a commercial airport. The murmurs of concern grew louder. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. "Flight attendants, prepare for landing." Lisa tightened her seatbelt and checked that her laptop bag was secure under the seat in front of her. Everything she needed was in that bag. The encryption keys, the algorithms, the evidence that had triggered this entire operation. The landing was smooth despite the tension that filled the cabin. As the plane taxied toward a hangar area, Lisa could see military vehicles waiting on the tarmac, police cars, fire trucks, and several black SUVs with government plates. "Those don't look like mechanics," the businessman across the aisle commented. Peering out the window, the aircraft came to a complete stop. Through her window, Lisa could see men and women in military uniforms approaching the plane. The F-22 had disappeared from view, but she knew it would have landed nearby. The captain's voice came over the intercom one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived safely at Andrews Air Force Base. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened until further instructions. I assure you this is purely precautionary." A collective anxiety settled over the passengers. Phones were out. People texting loved ones or trying to find information online about what might be happening. Lisa remained still, waiting. After several minutes, the main cabin door opened. A flight attendant stood at the front of the plane, alongside a man in an Air Force uniform with colonel's insignia. Ladies and gentlemen, the flight attendant announced, we're going to begin deplaning shortly. Colonel Richards from the United States Air Force will explain the situation. The colonel stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. Good afternoon. I understand this diversion has caused concern and inconvenience, for which I apologize. Your aircraft was diverted due to a security protocol. There is no danger to any passengers. You will all be escorted to a comfortable waiting area where refreshments will be provided. Transportation to Washington, D.C. will be arranged as quickly as possible. A woman near the front of the plane raised her hand. What kind of security protocol requires fighter jets? The colonel maintained a neutral expression. I'm not at liberty to share those details at this time. I can assure you this is standard procedure for certain situations. Lisa knew this was far from standard. Something had triggered the highest level of security response. Something connected to the information she carried. Diane approached her seat again. Ms. Thompson, she said quietly, would you please come with me? Lisa nodded, gathering her laptop bag and standing up. Helen looked at her in confusion. Where are you going? She asked. I need to make some calls about my connection, Lisa replied, the lie coming easily. I'll see you in the waiting area. The curious stares of passengers tracked her movement, their whispers creating a wave of speculation that rippled through the cabin. Who was this ordinary-looking woman from seat 12F, and why was she being singled out? At the front of the plane, Colonel Richards waited with two uniformed Air Force security officers. His eyes met Lisa's, and something unspoken passed between them. Ms. Thompson, he said formally, for the benefit of those listening nearby, if you'd please come with us. Lisa nodded once, clutching her laptop bag close to her side. As she stepped through the aircraft door and onto the jet bridge, the facade of Lisa Thompson began to fade away. Her posture straightened almost imperceptibly, her eyes sharpened with focus and authority that hadn't been visible before. The moment the door closed behind them, Colonel Richards's demeanor changed. Dr. Reynolds, he said, his voice now filled with respect, rather than the professional detachment he'd shown on the plane. We received the alert 90 minutes ago. Code Bluebird. The package is secure, Lisa, now revealed as Dr. Reynolds, replied. But we need to move quickly. How many people know about this? Just the essential personnel. The F-22 pilots, myself, and General Harmon, who's waiting for us in the command center. They moved swiftly through the jet bridge and into a secured area of the terminal where regular passengers would never go. The two security officers positioned themselves ahead and behind them, creating a protective formation. The other passengers? Dr. Reynolds asked. They'll be taken to a holding area, given refreshments and Wi-Fi access. The official story is a security drill that randomly selected their flight. They'll be on buses to D.C. within the hour with generous vouchers for their inconvenience. They pushed through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only and emerged onto the tarmac where a black Suburban with tinted windows waited. As they approached the vehicle, Dr. Reynolds glanced to her right and saw the two F-22 Raptors parked at a distance, their pilots standing nearby in conversation with ground crew. One of the pilots looked in her direction. Even from this distance, Dr. Reynolds could see him straighten his posture and nudge his colleague. Both men snapped to attention, their body language transforming from casual to formal in an instant. Colonel Richards noticed the pilot's reaction. They know who you are. They know the call code, Dr. Reynolds corrected. Few people know who I actually am. They climbed into the waiting Suburban. The interior was cool and smelled of leather and subtle air freshener. As soon as the doors closed, they were moving, driving across the tarmac toward a complex of buildings on the far side of the base. I need to brief you on what happened, Dr. Reynolds said, opening her laptop. 3 days ago, our monitoring systems detected unusual data patterns in critical infrastructure networks. The signatures matched a theoretical attack vector that I modeled 2 years ago, but was considered too complex to be a realistic threat. The colonel frowned. I remember the briefing on that model. The consensus was that no existing group had the capability to execute such an attack. That consensus was wrong, she replied, her fingers moving rapidly over the keyboard as she entered a series of complex passwords. The attack is real, and it's already in its first phase. Based on the pattern recognition, we have approximately 4 hours before it reaches critical systems. The Suburban pulled up to a nondescript building with heavy security. Armed guards checked their credentials before allowing them to pass through multiple security checkpoints. Each successive layer of security required higher clearance, until they reached a final door where Colonel Richards had to submit to a retinal scan. The door opened to reveal a command center humming with activity. Large screens displayed maps, data streams, and surveillance feeds. About 20 people worked at various stations, their focus intense and conversations minimal. A tall woman with short gray hair approached them immediately. Her uniform identified her as General Harmon, and the stars on her shoulder conveyed her authority. Yet when she reached Dr. Reynolds, her expression showed clear deference. "Dr. Reynolds, thank you for activating the protocol," she said. "When we received the Bluebird alert, I didn't believe it at first. That contingency was created for a scenario we hoped would never materialize. Unfortunately, it has," Dr. Reynolds replied. "I need a secure terminal with isolated network access, and I need the team that was designated in the Bluebird protocol." General Harmon nodded and led them to a glass-enclosed room at the center of the command area. Inside, 3 people waited. 2 men and a woman, all wearing identification badges with red borders indicating the highest security clearance. "This is the team," General Harmon said. Dr. Chen, our top quantum encryption specialist, Dr. Harris, head of cybersecurity operations, and Commander Wilson, liaison with our defensive cyber operations. Dr. Reynolds nodded to each of them and placed her laptop on the table in the center of the room. The team gathered around as she connected it to the secure terminal. 6 years ago, she began, I created a theoretical model for a multi-layer attack on critical infrastructure that could bypass all standard security protocols. The model was classified at the highest level because it exposed vulnerabilities that couldn't be patched without rebuilding entire systems from the ground up. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, bringing up complex diagrams and code streams on the large screen on the wall. The attack uses a series of seemingly unrelated intrusions that, when coordinated, create a cascading failure across multiple systems: power grids, water treatment facilities, financial networks, air traffic control, all compromised simultaneously. The team studied the screen, their expressions growing more concerned with each passing second. "Who has this capability?" Commander Wilson asked. "That's not important right now," Dr. Reynolds replied. "What matters is stopping it. I developed a countermeasure, but because of the sensitivity of the information, I kept it offline and fragmented across multiple locations. What I carried on that flight was the final piece, the algorithm that ties everything together." She inserted a small device, no bigger than a thumb drive, into the computer. "This contains the key. With it, we can implement the countermeasure before the attack reaches its critical phase." Dr. Chen leaned forward, studying the code that appeared on the screen. I've never seen anything like this. The complexity is beyond anything in current literature." "Because it doesn't exist in current literature," Dr. Reynolds said. "I developed it independently and kept it isolated specifically because of its power. In the wrong hands, this algorithm could be as dangerous as the attack it's designed to counter." As the team began working to implement the countermeasure, Colonel Richards pulled Dr. Reynolds aside. "There's something you should know," he said quietly. "When the F-22 pilots received the Bluebird call code, they were instructed to escort your plane here, but they were also given a second protocol, Phoenix." Dr. Reynolds froze. "Phoenix? That protocol is only activated if there's a direct threat to national leadership," the colonel finished for her. "Whatever this attack is targeting, someone high up believes it could destabilize the government itself." Outside the glass room, they could see General Harmon on a secure phone, her expression grave as she listened to whoever was on the other end. "How much time do we have?" Colonel Richards asked. Dr. Reynolds checked the progress on the screen. "If everything works perfectly, we should be able to deploy the countermeasure in 3 hours. If there are complications..." She didn't need to finish the thought. The colonel understood the implications. General Harmon ended her call and entered the glass room. "Dr. Reynolds, I've just spoken with the Joint Chiefs. They've escalated this to a Level 1 national security threat. You now have complete operational authority. Whatever resources you need, whatever personnel, they're yours." The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Level 1 threats were reserved for imminent attacks that could cripple the nation. The last time such a designation had been made was September 11, 2001. Dr. Reynolds looked around the room at the team waiting for her instructions. Just hours ago, she had been anonymous in seat 12F, just another passenger on a routine flight. Now she stood at the center of a national crisis, her hidden identity revealed, with the weight of countless lives resting on her shoulders. The command center hummed with urgent activity. Screens displayed cascading lines of code, infrastructure maps with blinking red warning indicators and countdown timers that seemed to move too quickly. In the glass-enclosed room at the center, Dr. Reynolds worked with focused intensity, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she implemented the countermeasure algorithm. "The attack is accelerating," Dr. Chen announced, pointing to one of the screens. "We're seeing the first signs of penetration in the northeastern power grid management systems." Dr. Reynolds nodded without looking up. "That matches the pattern. They start with power infrastructure, then move to water systems, then transportation networks. The financial system will be last. It gives them the most time to extract funds during the chaos of the other failures." Colonel Richards stood at the edge of the room, watching the team work. He had seen many crises during his military career, but the calm efficiency with which Dr. Reynolds operated was something special. There was no panic in her movements, no hesitation in her decisions. "I've isolated the first attack vector," Dr. Reynolds said, her voice steady. "Dr. Harris, I need you to implement this packet filter on the grid's gateway nodes." She transferred a block of code to his terminal. Dr. Harris studied it briefly, his eyebrows rising in surprise. "This is elegant," he said. "I've never seen this approach before." "That's why it will work," she replied. "The attackers are using known methods in unprecedented combinations. We're countering with methods they've never seen." Outside the glass room, General Harmon was coordinating with other agencies, ensuring that emergency response teams were on standby across the country. The potential for widespread infrastructure failure meant that hospitals, emergency services, and key government functions all needed backup plans. Commander Wilson approached Dr. Reynolds with a tablet displaying a map of the United States overlaid with a web of red lines. "We've confirmed intrusion attempts at these 16 locations," she said. "All critical junction points in the power distribution network." Dr. Reynolds studied the map and frowned. "They're moving faster than I anticipated. We need to accelerate our timeline." She turned to Colonel Richards. "I need direct access to the NSA's quantum computing lab." The colonel blinked in surprise. "That would require presidential authorization." "Then get it," Dr. Reynolds replied simply. "The countermeasure calculations will take hours on conventional systems. With quantum processing, we can cut that to minutes." General Harmon, who had overheard the exchange, stepped into the room. "I'll make the call myself," she said, already reaching for the secure phone. While they waited for authorization, Dr. Reynolds continued working, her focus unwavering. The room had fallen into a rhythm. Information flowed, decisions were made, actions taken. Despite the pressure, there was a strange harmony to their efforts. "Tell me something," Dr. Harris said during a brief pause as they waited for a system to compile. "Why keep this countermeasure offline? Why not implement it as a standard protection?" Dr. Reynolds looked up from her screen for the first time in nearly an hour. "Because it's not just a shield," she explained. "It's also a sword. The same algorithm that can block this attack could, with minor modifications, be used to launch one. I couldn't risk it falling into the wrong hands." "So you carried it with you," Commander Wilson said. "On commercial flights, hiding in plain sight." "The best security is often invisibility," Dr. Reynolds replied. "No one looks twice at a woman in seat 12F reading a paperback." The secure phone rang and General Harmon answered it. After a brief conversation, she hung up and nodded to Dr. Reynolds. "You've got your quantum access. Direct link is being established now." A new screen lit up on their display wall, showing a connection to the NSA's quantum computing facility. Dr. Reynolds immediately began uploading portions of her algorithm. "This will accelerate our calculations exponentially," she explained as she worked. "Instead of testing defense possibilities sequentially, we can explore all potential branches simultaneously." As the quantum system began processing the algorithm, Dr. Reynolds turned to a physical map spread across a table. "While that's running, we need to prepare for the possibility that we can't stop all aspects of the attack." "Colonel, what's the status of physical security at these locations?" She pointed to 7 spots on the map, key infrastructure nodes where physical systems connected to digital networks. "We have personnel en route to all critical facilities," the colonel assured her. No one gets access without triple verification. Dr. Reynolds nodded but didn't look convinced. They might already have people in place. This level of coordination suggests long-term planning. The tension in the room was momentarily broken when an aide brought in coffee and sandwiches. Dr. Reynolds accepted a cup with a grateful nod but left her sandwich untouched, her attention immediately returning to the screens. Quantum calculations at 60%, Dr. Chen announced. Dr. Reynolds checked her watch. 2 hours until critical systems are compromised. We need to work faster. As if the attackers had heard her, warning alarms suddenly blared throughout the command center. One of the main screens flashed red, showing a map of the eastern seaboard with power outages spreading like spilled ink across several states. They've breached the first firewall, Commander Wilson reported, her voice tight. 3 power distribution centers in New Jersey just went offline. Dr. Reynolds moved quickly to a terminal. They're using our response to locate the defensive nodes. It's like they can see our countermeasures. Her fingers paused over the keyboard as realization dawned. Unless, she turned to face the team, her expression grave. There's a mole. Someone with access to our security protocols is feeding them information. The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. The team members looked at each other, trust suddenly fragile. How can you be sure? General Harmon asked. The attack pattern changed the moment we began implementing defenses, Dr. Reynolds explained. They're adapting specifically to our methods, not just responding to blocked pathways. Colonel Richards frowned. Who would have that level of access? Anyone with level 4 clearance or higher, Dr. Reynolds said, which includes everyone in this room. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The collaborative energy was now tinged with suspicion. Dr. Reynolds studied each face carefully, looking for any sign of deception. We don't have time for an investigation, she finally said. We need to change tactics. She turned to General Harmon. I need a completely isolated system, no network connection whatsoever, and I need to implement the final phase of the countermeasure myself, with no observation. General Harmon hesitated. That's against all security protocols, which are compromised, Dr. Reynolds countered. This is the only way. After a moment of consideration, General Harmon nodded. There's a secure room 3 levels down. It was designed for exactly this scenario. Complete isolation with manual controls for connecting to external systems. Perfect, Dr. Reynolds said, gathering her laptop. Colonel Richards, you'll come with me. Everyone else stays here and continues the current defensive measures. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Chen approached Dr. Reynolds. The quantum calculations are complete, he said, handing her a small drive. The results are unexpected. Dr. Reynolds took the drive, her expression revealing nothing. Thank you. She and Colonel Richards left the glass room, passing through the bustling command center toward a secure elevator. Staff members moved aside respectfully, many watching with poorly disguised curiosity. The woman from Seat 12F had become the center of a national security crisis, her authority unquestioned despite her previous anonymity. In the elevator, Colonel Richards finally asked the question that had been bothering him since the beginning. Who are you, really? I've been in military intelligence for 20 years, and I've never heard of a civilian with your level of clearance. Dr. Reynolds looked at him, her expression softening slightly for the first time. Colonel, some things are classified beyond your clearance level. What matters right now isn't who I am, but what I know. And what I know is how to stop this attack. The elevator doors opened to reveal a dimly lit corridor with a single steel door at the end. Above the door, a red light indicated the highest level of security. This is it, Colonel Richards said. Once you're inside, you'll have complete isolation and control. Dr. Reynolds nodded and stepped forward, carrying with her the algorithm that might save countless lives, if they still had enough time. I've written part 4 of the story, focusing on the race against time as Dr. Reynolds and her team work to implement the countermeasure against the cyber attack. This section introduces a new complication, the possibility of a mole leaking their defense strategies to the attackers. It ends with Dr. Reynolds heading to an isolated facility to implement the final phase of her countermeasure, away from potentially compromised eyes. The narrative maintains the requested simple language and natural tone while building tension through the ticking clock, and the new element of suspicion among the team. I've kept the focus on human interactions and reactions to make the technical aspects of the story relatable and engaging. The isolated room 3 levels below the command center was stark and functional, A single workstation sat in the center, surrounded by servers and monitoring equipment. The walls were lined with lead and copper mesh, a Faraday cage that prevented any wireless signals from entering or leaving. This was a digital fortress completely cut off from the outside world except for manually controlled data lines. Dr. Reynolds set her laptop on the desk and connected it to the isolated system. Colonel Richards stood by the door watching her work. "I'll need to seal the room once I begin," she told him. "No one enters until I've completed the implementation." The colonel nodded. "I'll be right outside." "How long will it take?" "If the quantum calculations are correct, about 40 minutes. She glanced at her watch. "Which leaves us less than an hour before critical systems are compromised." "Good luck," he said, stepping outside. The heavy door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, locks engaging automatically. Alone now, Dr. Reynolds took a deep breath. Her first moment of true privacy since the F-22s had appeared alongside the commercial flight. She allowed herself exactly 5 seconds to feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, then pushed it aside and focused entirely on the task at hand. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision as she uploaded the algorithm from her secure drive. Lines of code filled the screen, complex patterns that represented years of work. This was her life's achievement, a defensive system so advanced that most security experts couldn't even understand its fundamental principles. Upstairs in the command center, tension mounted as the attack continued to spread. Power outages had now reached 5 states, and water treatment facilities in 2 major cities were reporting anomalies in their control systems. The team worked frantically to implement temporary defenses, but without Dr. Reynolds' final countermeasure, they were merely delaying the inevitable. "Any word from below?" General Harmon asked, checking her watch for the 4th time in 10 minutes. "Nothing yet," Dr. Harris replied. "The isolation protocols prevent any communication until she reestablishes connection." The general paced the length of the glass room. "And we're certain the leak isn't coming from down there?" Commander Wilson looked up from her terminal. "The colonel is trustworthy. I've worked with him for years." "And Dr. Reynolds?" Dr. Chen asked quietly. "How much do we really know about her?" The question hung in the air. Despite her obvious authority and expertise, Dr. Reynolds remained a mystery. She had appeared from nowhere with the highest security clearance any of them had ever seen, wielding knowledge that seemed almost impossible. "We know enough," General Harmon said firmly. "The Bluebird Protocol was established at the highest levels of government. If she has that clearance, there's a reason." 3 floors below, unaware of the doubts circulating above, Dr. Reynolds was making progress. The countermeasure algorithm was now fully uploaded and running through preliminary tests. On her screen, simulations showed the attack patterns being systematically identified and neutralized. But something wasn't right. A particular sequence in the attack code kept reappearing, adapting to each defensive measure. It wasn't behaving like a programmed response. It showed intelligence, creativity, almost as if. Dr. Reynolds paused, her hands hovering over the keyboard. "It can't be," she whispered to herself. She opened a new window and began typing furiously, creating a trace program to track the anomalous code back to its source. As the results appeared on her screen, her expression hardened. The attack wasn't coming from a foreign government or terrorist organization, as everyone had assumed. The source was domestic, a private server farm located less than 50 miles from where she sat right. Now, and the signature in the code was unmistakable. Dr. Reynolds reached for the phone that provided the only communication link to the outside world. "Colonel, I need to speak with General Harmon immediately." Upstairs, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. New alerts flashed across the screens as transportation systems began to fail. Air traffic control centers in 3 major hubs reported complete system failures, forcing flights into holding patterns or emergency landings at smaller airports. "This is worse than we projected," Dr. Harris said, his voice tight. "At this rate, we'll have nationwide infrastructure collapse within the hour." The secure phone on the wall rang and General Harmon answered it. After a brief conversation, she hung up and turned to the team. "Dr. Reynolds wants Commander Wilson to join her below. Immediately." Confusion crossed Commander Wilson's face. "Me, why?" She didn't say, but she was quite insistent. Commander Wilson nodded and left the room, heading for the elevator. As the doors closed, Dr. Chen turned to General Harmon. "Why would she want the military liaison?" he asked. The technical work is outside Commander Wilson's expertise. General Harmon shook her head. I don't know. But Dr. Reynolds hasn't steered us wrong yet. In the isolated room, Dr. Reynolds waited. Her countermeasure algorithm paused at a critical juncture. When the door finally opened and Commander Wilson stepped inside, neither woman spoke immediately. You requested me? Commander Wilson finally said, breaking the silence. Dr. Reynolds nodded, her expression unreadable. I did. I needed to see your face when I showed you this. She turned her screen so Commander Wilson could see it. On display was a complex trace analysis showing the attack's origin and, more damning, a side-by-side comparison of code signatures. That's, Commander Wilson began, but her voice trailed off. Your code, Dr. Reynolds finished for her, or at least code written in your very distinctive style. I recognized it as soon as the quantum analysis was complete. Commander Wilson's professional composure cracked slightly. How could you possibly know my coding style? Because I reviewed your doctoral thesis on adaptive security protocols 5 years ago, Dr. Reynolds replied. Anonymous peer review, of course. Your work was brilliant but flawed. You never knew who rejected your paper, did you? A flash of old anger crossed Commander Wilson's face. That paper was groundbreaking. The rejection set my career back years. It was dangerous, Dr. Reynolds corrected. You proposed exactly the kind of adaptive attack methodology that's being used right now. She gestured to the screen. And now here we are. Commander Wilson straightened, her military bearing reasserting itself. What happens now? That depends on you, Dr. Reynolds said. This attack will fail. My countermeasure is already undermining its foundation. But there will be damage, preventable damage, if you don't give me the kill switch I know you built into the system. For a long moment, the two women stared at each other, a battle of wills playing out in silence. Finally, Commander Wilson reached into her pocket and removed a small flash drive. It was never supposed to go this far, she said, placing the drive on the desk. It was just supposed to be a demonstration, to show how vulnerable we are. Dr. Reynolds took the drive. And the people who died when the hospital backup generators failed in New Jersey? Were they just part of the demonstration too? Commander Wilson had no answer. Upstairs in the command center, alarms suddenly stopped blaring. One by one, the red warning indicators on the screens turned yellow, then green. The attack was being neutralized, systems coming back online across the country. She did it, Dr. Harris said in disbelief. Whatever she implemented, it's working. General Harmon watched the displays with cautious optimism. Get me confirmation from field units. I want verification that systems are actually recovering, not just showing false positives. An hour later, Dr. Reynolds returned to the command center, Commander Wilson conspicuously absent. Colonel Richards walked beside Dr. Reynolds, his expression grim. The threat has been neutralized, Dr. Reynolds announced to the waiting team. Critical infrastructure is secure and recovering. There will be localized outages for the next 24 to 48 hours, but nothing life-threatening. And Commander Wilson? General Harmon asked. In custody, Colonel Richards replied. She's cooperating fully. The debriefing that followed was short and to the point. Dr. Reynolds explained how the attack had been stopped and outlined the security protocols that needed to be implemented to prevent similar vulnerabilities in the future. When she finished, she closed her laptop with an air of finality. If there's nothing else, I should be going, she said. I have a flight to catch. General Harmon looked surprised. You're leaving? Just like that? Dr. Reynolds nodded. My job here is done. The rest is up to your team. At least let us arrange military transport for you, Colonel Richards offered. No thank you, Colonel, she replied with a small smile. I prefer commercial flights. Less conspicuous. As she prepared to leave, Dr. Chen approached her. Before you go, he said hesitantly, may I ask a question? When she nodded, he continued. Who are you, really? Dr. Reynolds considered the question for a moment. Someone who prefers seat 12F, she finally said. Window seat, not too close to the bathrooms, not too far from the exits. It wasn't really an answer, but it was all they were going to get.